initial solar import duty. What does that do to their business? How much of that gets affected for all of them? And is there a case where there is one company which is not affected at all? For this detailed impact, we do have Vinay joining in. That's the big story of today. Vinay.
Hi, Bangalam. Good morning. So yes, in terms of what's happened in the US market, now US has actually set some initial duties on Indian solar imports at 126%. The rates mainly were determined by based on some foreign subsidies that were allowed to exporters to undercut domestic solar products. Now, apart from India, there are other countries also. There are some where solar exports do come to US. They are also seeing some duties there, but 126% for India and Indian solar players is what has come in. U.S. Commerce Commerce Department specifically highlighted that solar imports from India to the U.S. have jumped 9 times from 2022 to 2024. So a sharp increase in terms of exports from India to the US. Now, which companies actually get impacted? Vari Energies, they have around 28.6% exposure to the export market. Vikram Solar, 16%. Premier Energies has 0% export exposure. They are mainly focusing on the domestic market. So they do not get impacted by this. And that is why we've seen that recovery also come in terms for the stock of Premier Energies. So keep in mind, Premier Energies does not get impacted. But will this increase competition in the domestic market now? That's something that we'll have to keep an eye on.
Exactly. And Vinay, thanks for speaking about this, because now we have with us Vinay Rustagi, who is the Chief Business Officer at Premier Energies, joining in as well. Vinay, Vinny did tell us that you have no export exposure, so this news per se does not impact you. If you could give us a couple of clarification points. One, were you at some point looking to increase your exposure to exports from zero right now? And does this put a bit of a spanner in the works for your plans out there? That's point number one. And secondly, with now these guys finding it difficult to export, will they put pressure on you in the domestic market? And could there be competitive intensity? Those are the two worries that the street has.
Sure. Good morning. Thank you for having me. So look, I think as a business, we are always looking for new growth opportunities, particularly exports to large markets like Europe, the US, etc. Having said that, given the recent movements in tariffs and the policy intent from the US government, we decided a long time ago that it is best to base our entire business case on the Indian market, which, by the way, is growing very strongly and is providing us with a very attractive growth opportunity. So we have completely kind of, moved away from the export market. So as you said, we're not affected by it in the short, medium, or even the longer run. Coming to your second question about the impact on the overall market and the possibility of increasing competition domestically. Look, I think this is not new news. We've known this for a long time. In fact, this investigation itself was announced about 6 months ago. If you look at the overall exports from India to the US, they actually came down by more than 50% in 2025. And in fact, the total volume of exports was actually less than 3 gigawatts, which is, in my estimation, less than 10% of the total Indian module production. So, the US module exports were not, a material part of the entire Indian business. The industry has had a long time to adjust to this changing reality. And I think this is old news as far as we are concerned and the industry is concerned. So we don't see any material impact out of this announcement.
But Vinay, as Mangalam also mentioned about the fact that you may not have exposure to the export market, but does that mean that those who do, now that this happens, even if they may have begun to prepare for it long ago, does that mean that pressure increases for you in the domestic markets? And just to add to it, are you the largest player in the domestic market currently, considering you have a completely domestic focused business? What's your market share currently, and where do you see that going as we head into the next financial year as well?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So look, there are obviously some players who were exposed to the US market, but like I said, the share of exports to the overall domestic production is very small, and all these players have had a long time to adjust and refine their business model and move away from the US market, as we can see from the reducing share of exports to the US. I mean, this news itself is more than 6 months old, like I just said. So, yes, there'll be some impact on the margins on these players, but I don't expect any material impact on them, on any of the existing players or the industry overall. Uh, in terms of our business alone, our market share, very roughly speaking, is about 10% in module production, and I would say about 15% in solar cell production. And we intend to stay at these levels, partly increasing from here on now, maintaining a share between 12 to 15% over the middle and the long run.
How big is the data center opportunity for you?
Look, it is still quite nascent. The Indian data center market, uh, cumulatively speaking, is only about 1 gigawatts. But the expectations are now that with all the renewed focus on AI and the new tech, etc., the expectations are that the data center capacity will increase to between 10 and 15 gigawatts by 2030. And most of these data centers are expected to basically be green data centers, which means they're expected to run entirely on renewable energy. So overall, I see this opportunity at about, cumulatively speaking, at about 30 gigawatts over the next 5 years, which will provide demand growth of another 10 to 15% on the baseline numbers in India.
Right. What are, the quantum of imports of solar modules and solar related panels that come into India versus what they go into the US? Because if it's this duty which has been, imposed on Indian exports to the US, I'm sure it would have been for some of the other countries as well. What if those countries then start to look at India as a market? Is there a possibility that increases competition not only from domestic players, but other country players as well who were earlier looking to export to the US and now looking at newer markets?
Yeah, sure. So the good news there is that the Indian government has been very emphatic in its Make in India stance. And today there's a very strong protection in India, a multi-layer protection in the form of duties and non-tariff barriers like ALMM, so that no more imports are allowed into the country. And in fact, the share of imports has been coming down very, very sharply. Last year, the level of imports, if I look at the last quarter alone, October to December, was, in my estimation, less than 5% of the total domestic market. And I expect that to disappear almost completely in 2026. So I think the possibility of imports from China or other countries flooding the Indian market is really not there, as the government is really focusing on Make in India.
Mm. Vinay, before these concerns emerged, there was one lingering concern for the entire industry, and that is something that has kept the share prices also pretty subdued for both, for your company as well as your peers, is that of overcapacity. And the last time you spoke to us, you also mentioned the fact that there are concerns on the utility scale side because there is some delay in transmission and there is a slowdown in the tendering process as well. Has that improved ever so slightly, if I can say that, over the last 30 days, or do you see that improving going forward, or things remain as they are?
No, I think, the solar industry, one thing we can be rest assured is very fast moving. There's a lot of action on a daily basis. In general, in terms of the overcapacity concerns, look, I think there are a number of announcements. A lot of people have announced plans to come into the sector. But we have always maintained that, this is an extremely challenging sector in terms of high capital intensity, lots of operational and execution challenges, etc. And on the other side, the customers, we sell our modules to these large producers who need the highest efficiency modules at the lowest cost. So the customers are extremely demanding as well, and they want to work only with the top tier suppliers. So I think, a lot of players have announced an entry, but we feel that the actual capacity that is going to come will be much, much less. And we already see signs of that on the ground. in the form of people struggling to raise capital, lots of delays in execution. So the overall demand supply in the Indian market remains attractive.
Right.
On the demand side, your question was about transmission delays, etc. So look, yes, that is an ongoing concern. But the good thing there is that there is the non-utility scale market, which means the rooftop solar,
Right.
the solar pumps, and the corporate market. These segments are growing very, very strongly, and today account for about 60% of the total demand. So I believe that the growth is very broad-based, and the market is able to tolerate some delays on the utility scale side.
So the sense that we get from everything that you're saying is that all is well. Is that so?
Well, all is not always well. The market is always moving, and it is always a case of adjusting business strategies and business plans, like I mentioned. But yes, I mean, if I look at, again, your transmission delays, ideally, they won't be there. We would see faster growth in India. I expect the growth in the solar market over the next 2 years, having grown very, very strongly
Right.
over 24 and 25, to slightly taper down. But I think overall, the story of solar in India is extremely strong, given both the strong demand side as well as the government's very emphatic support for Make in India.
Vinay, thank you for sparing time and joining us today. You said that it's not always well. We'd hope that things get better, at least on the side that there are concerns. So thank you for joining us and clarifying on this very important issue. Premier Energies, the stock still down 5%, but a significant recovery from the lows of the day. Take a short break, focus on the bond markets with Manisha Gupta on the other side.